Hi, I'm Steve Lundborg from HowDoYouBrewBeers.com. In the following video, I'm going to show you how I brew beer. Let's get started. One of the most important parts of brewing, components of, is the grain, stored here in a metal garbage can. And anyway, we'll be using this and grinding it in just a moment and turning this into beer. So first you need to weigh your grain. And this is just a standard livestock scale. I'm doing today calls for 23 pounds of base malt. What I'm doing now is taking the process of extracting the sugar maltose from the grain. First we got to crack the grain. We don't actually grind it, you just crack it. And I made a little homemade, as you can see here, grain mill from various odds and ends. Again, we're turning the grain into a cracked malt. You can see it down here. Today's recipe calls for 4 adjunct malts, and we have Carapils, Caramel 40, Caramel 20, and Munich malt. And this is the recipe. I don't know if we can see it here. This is a wet hop recipe. This is my brewery, another piece of homemade equipment. It's got a 3-tier brewery. Right now this keg that we see is a keg cooker. It's been professionally or commercially turned into a kettle for brewing. I've added a couple of little things that I'll show you. Right now what we're doing is heating up water to about 150 degrees. This is the second stage or the final stage in converting as much of the starch in the grain to sugar, and then the sugar, of course, is fermented and turned into alcohol. And this is a pretty important part. So we're going to go up here and peer down into the mash tun, and you're going to see water already started and heating it up. This copper coil here, the ring, filters the mash, the grain, and keeps the grain from going into the boil pot, which I'll add soon. But this is the first stage of the brewing process here. So we'll get back to that in just a minute when we add the grain. Okay, right now we're in the mashing process. I've added the water. I'm stirring the grain so it won't burn, and we're bringing up the temperature, as I said before, about 150 or so. And then, because there's so much grain in this IPA I'm doing, the recipe calls for, I believe, a mash of 90 minutes, so I think I'm going to do that so that the conversion process will be complete. Anyway, so right now I'm just bringing up the temperature. I'll cover it, check on it every 15 minutes, and I'll stir to make sure that there aren't any spots that don't convert. The thing about barley and why it's such a popular grain is the fact that it has enzymes that actually at these temperatures convert the starch to sugars more efficiently than any other grain. We've finished the mashing process. I let this go for about 82 minutes, and now I've mashed off, which means I brought it up to temperature to stop the enzyme process. Bring it up to 168, 70, and then this is called the sparge tank, and what we're doing now is we're rinsing the sugar into the boil pot. I haven't attached the hose yet, but that'll happen in just a moment. There's a whole process for that, and this goes on for about an hour, and then we start the boil process, and that'll be another hour and a half. So right now we've got the tube in, and we're drawing the wort, as this is called right now, the pre-fermented beer. So there are a lot of details I've left out, but just for simplicity, one of the things we don't want to do is just let it run and mix with oxygen. There are certain stages where you want oxygen with the wort and certain stages where you don't. in making beer, and this is one of them where you don't want oxygen. So that's why we have this tube here, and then I have to watch the flow here and make sure that it doesn't fill too fast, because what we want to do is have a nice slow steady sparge as the water is rinsing the sugar, and occasionally every 15 minutes or so I'll stir it up, break up any pockets. Okay, now we're at the boil. Just about to fire it up. We're at 184 degrees. I've got my hops ready. This is going to be a 90-minute boil, so I got another hour and a half to go, and then we put it in the old fermenters and we're done. The step that's important is the hopping, and I've done the 90-minute hops for this, and then off to the side are the 60-minute hops, which I'm getting ready to put in about 20 minutes or so. Anyway, you'll notice I'm using hop bags. That's to make sure that it doesn't, they don't plug up my plumbing as I'm draining off the wort. You see it's getting a little dark. I've just put the wort chiller in. It's this little device right here. It's a coil to cool off the wort, and right now it has to boil for about 10 minutes, sanitize it. I put some hops in, yeast nutrient, and about 10 minutes after it starts to boil again, we'll turn on the water, turn off the heat, and cover it up. And then after it cools, wort goes into the carboys with some yeast. This is the brew kettle. Got plastic wrap, just regular old kitchen wrap to keep things from falling into the brew pot while it is cooling off, because at that point you can really get some contamination, or somebody can stick their fingers in there, and you don't want any contamination at all. That's the whole key to brewing, keep it clean. So anyway, you can see the wort chiller sticking out here, and this is the next morning, and then there's the wort chiller and the hop bag. My gravity test. This is an important aspect of brewing. You want to know how much sugar is in the wort, and that'll give you a prediction of what you're going to get when the fermentation is over. And then you take another reading. This is a hygrometer, sacchrometer, and little numbers there tell me what we have. Which it looks like 65, 60. It's really kind of difficult. You gotta make sure this doesn't stick on the side there. Almost, yeah, like 65 or so. Anyway, and then you look over here, and it has like an alcohol percentage. So it's like 8% or so potential, but you have to take a reading at the end and then do a little math. This is the IPA that I brewed yesterday, starting to ferment. You can see that the solids have been going to the bottom. There's some floating bits of yeast, and it's not really going full on, but it's getting there. You'll notice that I have a handy little device down here that tells me the temperature, and I'm right in the range, lower range, which I want to be for fermentation of the IPA. There's a little secret to that, which I'll reveal later. We move over here to my yeast starter flask, and you can see that's going very nicely. Got a little bubbling going, and the fermentation lock here. Check that out. There we go. Bloop. And nice foam. See the foam down here. So it's that's going along quite nicely. And pretty soon this carboy will be doing the same thing.